name's Bond. James Bond.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Bond vs. Godzilla, the podcast that compares and contrasts two of the longest-running film series in cinema history. My name is Cruz Moore, and I will be your resident Godzilla expert on this show. Joining me on this cinematic journey for however long it lasts are three of my very good friends who each have their own history and experience with both film franchises. Bond expert Jacob Roberts.
My name is Jacob Roberts, and I am terrified of horses.
Audio engineer Willie Crook.
Explosion Wednesday.
And digital artist Chas Lemons.
I'm Charles Lemons, and I'm sick of seeing blimps flying into the
Empire State Building?
Yeah, okay.
Wrong
Empire
side.
State Bridge.
Golden Gate Bridge.
Okay. I'm Charles Lemons, and I'm super excited for my trip onto the... God damn it.
How about you do something that's not complicated? How about 3 words? Can you handle 3 words?
I'm Charles... Yeah, just the first syllable of my name.
On today's episode, we'll be tackling A View to a Kill from 1985 and Godzilla 1985 from 1985. So without further ado, Jake, give us a backstory on, the humanity.
From a fine to a check, from a check to a view to a kill in the morning. These lyrics to the traditional British folk song Do You Know John Peel provided the title for the short story which A View to a Kill borrows its name from, but literally nothing else. It features a wholly original plot, focusing on the vital industry of integrated circuit microchips, which boomed in the 1980s and were manufactured almost exclusively in Silicon Valley, California. As the movie dutifully informs the audience, the region, as well as San Francisco, sits along the San Andreas fault line and is prone to frequent earthquakes. Any child raised in Southern California, however, will naturally already be aware of this fact. For decades now, school children from a young age have been warned by their parents and teachers about the impending doom that faces us all in the form of the Big One, a long overdue earthquake that would reduce California to rubble or, as some would have you believe, break California off from the rest of the United States and sink into the ocean. These fears are not completely unfounded, as San Francisco in particular has seen the devastating effects of earthquakes in the past. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake, with a magnitude of 7.9, was the deadliest earthquake in the history of the United States that resulted in the deaths of over 3,000 people. Another powerful quake would rock San Francisco again nearly a century later in October of 1989, 4 years after the release of A View to a Kill. A few months earlier, on the morning of June 28, 1989, a smaller earthquake struck just south of Los Angeles. It was a comparatively normal and uneventful quake, but on that day, a child would be born. A child who, like all other children in Southern California, grew up with the fear of the Big One being pounded into his head on a daily basis, filling him with fear and anxiety. But that fear vanished one fateful afternoon when the child turned on the television and happened to catch a movie that would change his life forever.
That's actually like a really cool way to get introduced into a series and have it like become something that you will love for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's basically my Bond origin story. And it's true. When I was really young, I did live in like constant daily paranoia of, the big one's going to kill us. The big one's going to kill us. And so seeing this movie was, cathartic for me. And it did allow me to move on with my life, especially since I had a hero that I could really grasp onto and connect with. The shot from the movie that still makes me tear up to this day is, when Bond is carrying the girl out of the flaming building, out of the town hall, down the fire escape, the music swelling, everyone cheering him on. you could see that scene as being kind of a little cheesy and grandiose. But for me, that scene is what cemented a hero in my mind. That is the one scene that I always turn to define what a hero is.
I think that's completely understandable because I think one of the reasons why this has become one of my favorites in the series is that it's just back to basics and it feels really grounded. And just like you said, like just watching Bond rescue a single woman and carry her out of a burning building, it's like, yeah, this is a man of the people who still has an incredible mission to do, but he's still taking the time to save a single life. Yeah, well, like one of the connections that I found with this movie is that both of them have rescues with fire hoses,
Yes.
which I thought was very because the elevator doesn't work. There's also both of these movies have just random homeless people in them for some reason.
Oh my god!
Right.
Yeah,
That are present for a rescue with a fire hose.
Yes.
I have a new respect for the movie, and I've never
Right.
disliked it.
Uh-huh.
I've never thought it was a bad movie. But I really hate the Bond girl.
Yeah,
in
no,
this movie.
this one when I was
Let's go, Willie. Let's go.
Yeah, I've
Let's
been
fight.
interested in this
Let's
because
fight.
here we do have very two different polarizing opinions, and I can't wait to see this play out. What did we think of Stacey Sutton?
I felt like she was way too assuming of she was being left behind in that scene with the fire. And it drives me up the fucking wall. He didn't say you're on your own. And I also fault him in the sense of he didn't say he didn't say stay there, but I feel like that's out of character. I feel like he would have actually have said, stay there, I'm gonna get something for you to climb down, instead of just climb up, open up the elevator door and leave, and then come back and open it saying, here. It's like, comfort them before that, especially if she's screaming at you. But it drove me nuts.
I have
The constant screaming from her.
I have two cases for the defense in this trial.
Okay.
One is that, right, as the audience, we know that he is most likely going to come back. However, I think him not saying that in a situation where he doesn't have a lot of resources does give you a little bit of suspense as to whether or not he will actually be able to pull this off. Secondly, if you're any person in a elevator shaft consumed in flames and smoke inhalation, even if you're pretty certain this person's going to come back, I think it's a given that you might be in panic mode and going, for the love of God, save me.
And I get it. I get it that you're going to be in panic mode. But it was aggravating to me. And it was aggravating the first time I saw it, and it was aggravating the second time I saw it.
I mean,
And it was aggravating the third time I saw it, which was with you guys.
I mean, it's a reasonable amount of panic, especially from the kind of person who is used to living in an area where they feel comfortable keeping a loaded shotgun around, but they load it with rock salt to not, like, terribly kill people.
Because
it wasn't even... Yeah.
I feel like if I was in this scenario and, like, Chaz was obviously going to come back, I would still be screaming, Chaz, you better fucking come back.
Yeah.
I have my utmost trust in you, but...
And if you're not coming back, you better fucking say so I can prepare to haunt your ass.
Right.
But no, like, and I get it. This is a purely me thing, and I don't fault it in the sense of a bad movie. It just aggravates the hell out of me, like that kid in that Godzilla movie. It's that
Right.
same screeching pitch that just triggers the right nerve in my brain that makes me go, shut the fuck up for 2 seconds, please.
You heard it here first, folks. All you women out there, if you ever get caught in a burning building, you better shut the fuck up, because Willie will not save you.
I will save you as long as your pitch isn't that specific.
I will come back to save you. Just zip it. Just shut up.
This PSA brought to you by Sean Connery. I never really liked her that much. She definitely falls into the category of one of my least favorite Bond girls, mainly because she spends the majority of the movie as a damsel in distress, and I never really liked that all that much. I did have an appreciation for the point that you brought up, Cruz, afterwards, where out of all the Bond girls, she is the one who is just the most everyman, who just walked off the street. Like if just an absolutely random bystander who has absolutely nothing to do with anything going on, just a completely normal person, gets dragged into Bond's escapades, yeah, believably that is how they would react and respond to things. So when you brought that up, I did kind of fester a bit of an appreciation for her for me, but kind of helpless a little bit too often for my liking.
I mean, I liked the scene where she's just like, "Ah, screw it," and just uses her like grandfather or great grandfather's
Right.
urn to like hit the guy on the head. It's like, sorry.
Yeah, I like her very much for
Yeah.
just the fact that she's just normal. She's not necessarily a Bond girl, which is why I feel like that's the reason why she's not on the advertisements. It's
Grace
Mayday.
Jones, yeah,
right,
Mayday.
Yeah, that's on it.
At the same time, if you want to, split hairs and all that, there's not too much of a distinction between Mayday and, say, Pussy Galore, who also spent the majority of her film on the side of the main bad guy until she betrays him in the last few minutes of the film. And now suddenly she's, on Bond's side, and she's considered the main Bond girl of that film. So, what's the distinction between Pussy and Mayday?
I mean, it's kind of interesting how how close Mayday is to the Musk-esque villain in this movie, and like it does come off as like way more of a betrayal towards the villain.
Yeah, but I think that, like, in finishing with that topic, I think Stacy is just like this sweet woman who gets caught up in a crazy situation, and
I can agree with that entirely.
Yeah, because
I think one of the sweetest scenes in the whole series is just Bond putting her to bed and walking out, and it's like, good boy,
Yeah, yeah.
good job. Like halfway through the movie, it becomes a domestic thriller where Bond is using a shotgun to blast people from a staircase, and I really got into that because it's just like,
it's a fun scene.
yeah, it's just
It is.
It's a home invasion that he has to fight off, and it's like, all right, we're back to the basics, and,
And
it
it's
feels
only
good.
it's only like 2 shots in that he asks like, "What's this thing loaded with?"
right.
It was like 5 or 6.
And there's
I'm pretty
there's a
sure.
cat jump scare, so it feels really tense.
Oh, the fucking cat. Yeah.
Cruz, that has to be like the closest to feeling like an RE7 that these movies have gotten.
RE7 doesn't have any cats in it.
Well, okay, well the blasting somebody who is barely affected by a shotgun
That too,
that
yeah.
much.
Fucking cats. No, it's funny. It's like, the home invasion scene is just a really cool scene. He's just blasting people with a shotgun, sending them flying. And it's fun that because it's a O'Neill rock salt shotgun, Bond doesn't actually kill anyone in that scene. They all just scamper away and retreat.
Yeah, but you really don't get to see
So
Bond have that kind of reckless abandon
Yeah.
with like a two-handed weapon like that.
Bond doesn't use shotguns enough.
Fair.
That's true.
He does not use shotguns enough.
Was there anything interesting about the iceberg submarine?
The iceberg submarine, no, the submarine itself was just a model. The opening title sequence, or the pre-title sequence, was filmed in 2 locations. The actual skiing sequence, which was once again filmed by Willy Bogner, that was in Switzerland. Yep, that scene was in Switzerland. And then the area with the actual fjord and the floating icebergs, that was filmed in, I want to say, Norway? No, Iceland. That was off the coast of Iceland. And that was actually, filming there was actually pretty dangerous because there was no solid ground. It was literally nothing but floating ice. So that's the only place that they could set up the filming equipment, was on just floating chunks of ice. And so the fear of the ice like tipping over and taking people with it was real.
shit.
And there was film equipment that was lost on that shoot in the icebergs, including 2 of the model helicopters that they were using for the model helicopter shot to make that buff burn and explode. And I believe some cameras fell into the water in the fjord, but no one was hurt, just lost some equipment.
I imagine they probably budgeted for some lost equipment because they knew where they were going. But
Did they lose footage though?
Possibly. It's very possible.
I mean, if they lost a camera, possibly.
Yeah.
Not ground ice.
Ice. Yes. Thank you.
What was that from again?
That was on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah,
I
okay.
am validated.
But speaking of that opening sequence, like
Yeah.
this movie had me with California Girls.
Yeah, I knew like
This is what we're in for.
California Girls suddenly busting up is definitely a tone setter. And it's one of those things where like, if you can't handle these sudden random bursts of California Girls, if that's already crossed a line for you, you're not going to survive the 90s.
If you don't like California Girls, you're gonna have a bad
You're
time.
going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
And I remember I was always on the fence about that when I was really young because I am also a massive Beach Boys fan.
Right.
Willie knows about this, like everyone knows about me, that I grew up with the Beach Boys. They were my childhood artists. And so, when I'm watching, the first Bond film I ever saw, here's one of your favorite songs from one of your favorite artists. That really shouldn't be there. That's really stupid if they put that in there, but god damn it, am I glad that's there.
Yeah. It makes me facepalm the entire time it's playing, but at the same time I'm bobbing along.
Yeah, you facepalm, but you have a massive stupid grin on your face the entire time.
Yeah, because he's snowboarding. It's snow. It's
Right,
cold.
and that's exactly why I love it.
California Girls is playing in the background.
And like that kind of segues into another reason why I think this movie is actually pretty damn good is because there's a ton of Bond improvising in this movie, from having to switch to one ski to having to use the front of the snowmobile as a snowboard. So the entire rest of the movie, Bond's always like having
less gadgets, more wits.
Yeah, just all his improvised stuff is just always breaking, and he's always having to figure it out.
Yeah, I love the scene where they try to drown him at the lake in the Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have like a Thunderball style breather on him. No, he has to breathe through the tire.
Mm-hmm. That was something I was going to bring up because once again, it's like, we're back to basics. This is just a guy, pretty much.
This film has very little in terms of traditional gadgets. It is just Bond with his wits.
Yeah, this is just a guy with wits and who also is like well learned and knows how the world works and can use that to his advantage.
Wits, a snowboard, a shotgun, a fire hose.
Whatever he has lying around.
Does he
fire truck?
Does he carry a gun in this one?
Yeah, he has a gun.
Yeah, he has a gun, but he never uses it. He never even pulls it out. Someone else pulls it out when he gets it gets confiscated from him.
I think it gets taken from him twice.
Yeah, no, because Zorin takes his gun inside of City Hall and uses Bond's gun to kill Mr. Howe.
Right, yeah. God, that's so...
Yeah.
That was like such a good villain moment. Even if it wasn't very well planned out, it's just a good villain moment.
I mean, should we stop playing tiddlywinks and talk about Max Zorin?
Yeah, my favorite villain so far. And
he is so good.
He is a fucking psychopath, and I hate him, and I love him so much.
Like Mads Mikkelsen and Christopher Walken, like just give me more of that.
He's one of the best villains in the entire franchise. I love him to death.
Like, it's just slightly weird that young Christopher Walken looks like Elon Musk from like 10 years ago.
Okay, funny thing with Christopher Walken is that obviously A View to a Kill was my introduction to Christopher Walken. Mm-hmm. It blew my fucking mind the day I learned he wasn't actually blonde.
He does pull it off really well.
It does. It doesn't look like, if you know it's bleach, you can tell it's bleach. But if you don't, like, it looks pretty natural a lot of the time. And so, like, for the longest time, I always assumed Christopher Walken, he's blonde until I saw a picture of him from somewhere else. And I'm like,
who the fuck is that?
Because we saw in the credits during the opening title sequence, Christopher Walken, we're like, all right, we're in for a good time.
Yeah.
And he could easily go crazy as soon as you see him, but he gets more and more as
it
the movie
progresses.
Yeah.
What I really find interesting about Christopher Walken's performance as Max Zorin is that he never goes full Walken.
Right.
And that in itself is very Walken.
Yeah.
Like, Christopher Walken is known for just being completely outlandish, over the top, not just chewing the scenery, but digesting it. And you would think that the one role in which you are allowed to do that with reckless abandon would be a Bond villain. But no, give Christopher Walken a Bond villain, and he plays it for the most part straight. Like, he actually tries to be menacing and kind of and dour and threatening, and seeing that coming from Christopher Walken just heightens it.
It's this quiet, subdued insanity that you feel like is going to come out at any moment.
He never screams. He never yells. Everything he says is kind of just said pretty, for the most part, calmly and with like a smirk of joviality that comes from him just being a freaking psychopath.
He's evil and he loves it. You got to respect that.
Max Zorin never gets angry. If anything, whenever he's put in a bad situation, whether it's falling to his death or just being jided back with a backhanded compliment, he just laughs it off.
Yeah.
Unless you bring up the fact that he's a science experiment, and then he has this
That's
great
that's like his
change of smiling and then down.
drops it. That's like his
drops.
one berserk button. Whenever anyone brings up the fact that he's a science experiment,
Right.
he just immediately loses that shit-eating grin, and it's just a great performance all around.
Yeah, the most psychotic you see this character is the climax of the mine shaft, literally just massacring everyone.
While laughing all the way while doing it.
Yeah.
And then, like, when we get to the ending, where a Bond villain could easily cry out in fear or something. No, he's
laughs. He
slipping
laughs to
off
his
of the
death.
Golden Gate Bridge, but he's laughing. He just
Because he's a fucking nutter.
Yep.
And like even up until the Minecraft massacre, he's just like, I'm gonna need an extra clip.
The what?
You said the Minecraft massacre.
You did.
I thought that was intentional.
I thought it was too at first, but then I was like, wait, no.
I wish, because I would have thought of a better way to deliver it.
Get out.
Okay. And it was like up until the Mineshaft massacre, like he's still just like, I need an extra clip. And he's still very straight faced about the whole thing.
Just business as usual, another day at the office for him.
And then he eventually gets one of my favorite cinematic weapons of all time, which is a fire axe, fighting Bond on top of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's like, yeah, you can't get any better than this.
One of my favorite things about Bond films are exotic locations. And I love it when a Bond film properly uses their exotic locations and their landmarks, which not every film does. But A View to a Kill, I think, does it the best. Because, for the first half of the movie, you have an entire sequence on the Eiffel Tower. And then in the climax, you have the top of the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, that is how you properly use your locations and really bring the really bring the world together. Like, no, it'd be one thing you have Golden Gate Bridge in the background. Hey, it's San Francisco. No, have a fight on top of it. That is just.
And like they don't even just keep it to like the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower or
they
just
climb it.
or the road on the Golden Gate Bridge. They're on the maintenance areas.
What a view to a kill.
Yeah, that chase scene it's just reckless abandon of like, I need this car and I'm gonna crash into this and the car's
Oh
gonna be
my
in half.
God! Oh my God!
So good.
Yeah.
So the stuntman who did the Eiffel Tower jump, his name was B.J. Worth, and he practiced the jump by continuously jumping out of a hot air balloon to get like the super precise timing. It was like less than a 3-second window that you had to get to pull open your parachute jumping out of the Eiffel Tower. Getting the permission to film and do the stunt in Paris was incredibly difficult. And the filmmakers fought with the local authorities the whole way. A pair of thrill seekers heard about the stunt that the film was going to perform and jumped off the tower themselves without permission, which almost caused the Paris government to back out of the deal and strip Eon of their permissions. But they were, they managed to, since like, hey, we had nothing to do with those guys.
Did those guys have parachutes or?
I should hope so.
Yeah, me too. Well, they just bring a bundled up bungee cord with them.
So for the actual stunt, they had a second stuntman on standby, a man by the name of Don Calvert. They had him on standby just in case they needed another take. They didn't. B.J. Worth performed the stunt perfectly, and a second take wasn't needed. But Calvert still wanted to do the jump. So he and a friend snuck out to the Eiffel Tower early in the morning and performed the Eiffel Tower jump without permission, thinking no one would notice.
How would you think no one would notice?
Because it's early in the morning.
Unfortunately,
Nobody looks at national landmarks early in the morning.
John Glenn and his crew were halfway up the tower that morning discussing film shots when he saw Calvert just fall past him. Yeah.
And so that's why I think we should go with the 4.3.
So once again, the city got pissed off and it jeopardized the entire shoot. Calvert was fired and was banned from working on any Bond film ever again.
Oh.
Yeah, if you almost entirely ruin a movie because of your stupidity, yeah, you kind of deserve that.
Wait,
That's
Jake, are
fine.
you telling me that somebody who doesn't mind getting in hot shit around national landmarks with the national government of the whole country might not be great for working on international films?
I regret nothing. So then,
I regret nothing. Oh shit, it's my boss. I regret everything.
So I don't know if I was fully paying attention to that. So wait, the stuntman did it twice?
No, there were two stuntmans. They had two stuntmans ready just in case they needed the second take, but they got it in one take, so they didn't need the second guy to jump. Second guy still wanted to jump, so he just did it himself without permission.
I don't blame him.
I'm sorry, Cruz. I'm sorry, Cruz. Excuse me, but how do you not pay attention to a story about people jumping off the Eiffel Tower?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to foster a Holland Lop right now. I'm sorry. Hold on. I gotta check my email.
Bunnies. Got it.
I apologize.
No. Don't. It's understandable.
There's 14 Lops that are without homes right now.
As opposed to the exact opposite of Paris, San Francisco welcomed James Bond with open arms. Mayor Dianne Feinstein was a lover of the film industry and wanted to promote the city through various films. And so they gladly provided the fire trucks, tram cars, whatever the filmmakers needed. They even allowed the team to set City Hall on fire and spray it with fire hoses.
Wait, so they actually set City Hall on fire?
Yes, they did.
Awesome.
Are you fucking...
Yeah, no, they actually set City Hall on fire, controlled flames and all that. But yeah, no, they actually set it on fire and sprayed it with actual fire hoses. It was 100% real.
Did San Francisco provide the cop cars at all that get completely demolished? Great.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Because
Was that the actual chief of police car that they crushed?
I hope so. That'd be amazing.
That
wouldn't
would be.
Because there is this great moment where they jump over this bridge with a fire engine. The only problem is you don't see like a slow motion shot of that happening.
Yeah, it's not as impressive looking as it sounds jumping the bridge with the fire truck, but the real highlight of it is the cop car stuck at the top of the bridge and falling down. That's the cool part.
Yep.
Most of the lines of Bond berating Tibbet when he was pretending to be a chauffeur were ad-libbed by Roger Moore.
Nice.
Most of that was ad-libbed.
That scene was pretty nice. It felt supernatural.
Was it ad-libbed because he was told to ad-lib it, or did he just start doing it?
It's Roger. He just started doing it. Roger was a notorious prankster on the set of Bond. That whenever he knew that they could afford a take, he would like purposely sabotage a take just for shiggles. There's a great story by Desmond Llewellyn. He sometimes he had difficulty with the techno babble that you would have to spew out his cue, because he's not a technical person at all, but he has to like explain these gadgets like he knows he made them, and so sometimes when he would be struggling with his lines, they would have cue cards for him. Roger Moore would sabotage the cue card and replace the actual cue card with one that just says the word bollocks.
Please tell me there are takes of this available online.
Not that one. There is a take of a filmed deleted scene / outtake in the special features where they actually filmed Stacy getting fired by Hal, her actual firing.
Well, what happened?
I got fired. He fired me.
All right, calm down.
Fired me.
Listen, Stacy, this evening, we are going to meet with a friend of mine from Washington, and maybe, just maybe, he'll come up with a few answers. All right?
I just can't believe it.
Well, life is short. I mean, him. You know, who needs it? Come on, get rid of it.
Oh my God.
The last film with Roger Moore. So, final thoughts of Roger Moore as James Bond.
So he didn't beat Sean Connery as Bond himself, but I think to me Roger Moore is best as like he's just a very snide, subverted British person. He's more like a very cool, funny uncle rather than like a man of mystery. I think he's definitely the funnier of the two, but not so much embodies like the secret agent kind of person. If I were to go like best and worst, I think the best two have been... Well, after this one, it's tough, because for me, it's like The Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, and A View to Kill are like some of the best. Mm-hmm. And then Live and Let Die and Man with the Golden Gun, I'd say, are probably more of his worst ones. Actually, no, wait. Man with the Golden Gun and For Your Eyes Only, I think, are the lesser of the two. Lesser, I don't know. What?
Worst of the two. He's a fun Bond. Connery embodied suave. Roger embodied fun for the most part, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Sean Connery was definitely the more masculine, kind of like, you could see him being used as like, for like assassin work or something like that. Lazenby is definitely more of a fun Bond to watch. in a situation where I'd bring my kids. So he definitely feels like a more approachable James Bond. Like you would actually be able to like have like a conversation with him in almost any context, and he'd be able to spitball something out. And
Did you mean to say Lazenby or Roger Moore?
Wait.
You said Lazenby.
Fuck, I knew Jacob was looking at me for some reason. God damn it.
I was waiting for you to go back to Moore, then you continue talking. I'm like,
See, I did the same thing like 5 episodes ago.
God damn it. I have to re-say all of that, don't I?
No, you're fine.
But yeah, Sean Connery was definitely cool, but Lazenby is...
you said Lazenby again.
Oh my god, what the fuck?
It was ultimately Roger's decision to finally bow out of the series for the simple reason that he was just too old for the part. It was time to move on. This is also the last movie in which we will see Lois Maxwell as Miss Moneypenny.
Oh, right.
They're getting there.
Yeah, so she left for similar reasons, that she felt that she had just become too old for the part, and if they were going to have a new younger Bond come in, you can't have him flirting with, a woman that could potentially be his mother,
Yeah.
so.
Miss Cougar Penny.
Yeah, so it was they both
Go
felt
on.
it was time for them to bow out.
What did you say, Chris? What did he say? I missed it.
I said go on. All in all, like with because you kind of introduced this movie as being middle of the road for some people. I think it's definitely one of the better ones for me because of how simple and like back to basics. So for his last film, I think it's definitely a great send off, and
It is. I agree.
It's up there
definitely
for
a
Yeah.
great send off.
like Diamonds Are Forever is a great send off, and this is a great send off for
Like
Roger
I
Moore.
said in the last episode, I've always considered Octopussy to be like the climax of the Moore era. It's the one where all the themes and everything that were brought up in the Moore era kind of came to a head, and it feels the most climactic, and especially in terms of its stakes. Whereas A View to a Kill, I've always just kind of seen as, just one more, just one more adventure for the road.
I like that pun. Like, I like how like this movie does kind of feel like they've been taking everything they've been learning from the Moore era and kind of using it to the best of their ability to make the most out of who they have for this film. Like the villain's in a literal freaking medieval, like, is it medieval castle or is it?
No, it's actually a real location in France. It is the backstory that Zorn gives for the estate of belonging to a duke who had a dream that he would be reincarnated as a horse, so he turned it into pretty much a palace for horses. That's 100% true.
Yet, when told by Christopher Walken, you can't help but laugh because of his delivery. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, sir.
built by a duke who believed he would be reincarnated as a horse. Can I take your coat?
But yeah, like from that to like the iceberg submarine and how the top henchman ends up basically siding with Bond and sacrificing herself, like in the fight on the Golden Gate Bridge, which is probably one of the best end fights in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like this movie does really feel like they've been learning everything from every Moore movie up until now.
Easily one of my favorite climaxes in the entire series is a fight on top of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
That's just iconic.
Yeah.
Which, as far as I'm concerned, we don't see Christopher Walken's body at the end of that, so I think he's still alive.
For all you know, he has gills.
Yeah.
Or some oxygen implanted in him.
Or at the very least, rock hard skin that won't immediately break every bone in his body when he hits the water from that height.
Nanomachine, son.
Has
Like I said.
Walken in this movie with blonde hair, Photoshop him as Albert Wesker. I mean, with the emphasis on horses and using injections for them, I honestly this. Okay, this Bond film has a lot of great mystery because I have no idea what path it's going and what their plan is, and it starts off making you think it's genetic experimentation on horses. The horse is a bomb. It's a nuke horse. It's a horse nuke.
It's a super horse.
Because it goes.
To quote the McElroy brothers, you've seen War Horse. Now there's Horse War.
You go from leaking prototype microchips to fixing horse races to genetic Nazi experiments to creating an earthquake to destroy California.
That's wonderful.
And like, at no point during like all these revelations do you ever feel like they're jumping the shark when it comes to like bringing in these topics in this movie. It does feel surprisingly inlaid. So Jake, when you saw this movie as a child, were you still terrified of horses?
I actually would have seen this movie before the incident that triggered my phobia.
Yeah, because you got thrown off of one.
I didn't get thrown off, but I did. The horse that I was put on that did go out of control. My memory of the incident is just completely non-existent. The next thing I remember is just kind of being post-comatose. Like I was on the horse started moving, and then the next thing I know, I am surrounded by a bunch of concerned adults standing around me, and I am like a porcelain doll.
Aww.
All Jake can remember is he was standing by himself, covered in blood and a horse's corpse. What did I do?
Cruz, this no offense, but this kind of makes your Christopher Reeves joke a little bit more bad taste.
I
Honestly,
mean, that's exactly why I said it.
I know, right?
Meeting you with a view to a kill, face to face in secret places, feel the chill. Nightfall covers me, but you know the plans I'm making still oversee. Could it be the whole of opening wide? A sacred wine, a mystery gaping inside. The weekend's why until we dance into the fire. That fatal kiss is all we need. Dance into the fire to fatal sounds of broken dreams. Dance into the fire.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Bond versus Godzilla.
Christopher Walken, you've been found out. You're a goddamn lich.
My name is Cruz Moore. No relation.
Please do the whole intro like that.
People are gonna turn off.
Yeah.
Well,
And I'll be your resident Godzilla expert on the show.
because he was traveling in a blimp in this movie, it wasn't Christopher Walken. Instead, Christopher was flying.
Or was it Christopher?
Willie, you haven't done your share for this episode. You need to embarrass yourself.
You must
Well-
contribute.
I'm the recordist. I make you guys sound better.
It just
and
sounds
I-
like you. Godzilla is a living nuclear weapon, destined to walk the Earth forever. It would only be a matter of time before he'd make his long-awaited return to the silver screen. The 3 Mile Island disaster in 1979, the resurgence of the nuclear arms race in the 80s, and a petition made by a 10,000-member group called the Godzilla Resurrection Committee, containing 40,000 signatures to bring Godzilla back, laid the groundwork for Toho to start digging. Producer Tomoyuki Tanaka, hoping to correct his past mistake of making Godzilla a kid-friendly hero, penned an original story that would be a direct sequel to the original film, with the monster serving as a catalyst for a US-Soviet nuclear conflict. Tanaka stated, "We wanted to show how easily an atomic incident could occur today. Vivid images of nuclear war are taboo, but Godzilla, on the other hand, can bring the message to light." The film would be called The Return of Godzilla and was released in 1984 as a return to form for the character's menacing presence, destructive nature, and humanity's fate caught in the middle. Upon its success in Japan, American distributor New World Pictures was tasked with releasing a more streamlined version of the film for American audiences, in the same way that 1954's Gojira was re-edited in 1956. Having less than 2 months to work on it, New Line followed in the same vein of dubbing and re-editing the film, as well as filming new scenes in America, bringing back Raymond Burr as reporter Steve Martin from 1956's Godzilla, King of the Monsters. In America, the film received mostly negative reviews and didn't do much to revive Godzilla's appeal, despite making a killing on home video, selling 100,000 VHS copies at $80 a pop. Nowadays, the film itself is generally considered by fans to be middle of the road. Not the best, not the worst. Many fans and critics claim that the American version alters the dark, dramatic tone and narrative by inserting unnecessary scenes and humor in an attempt to Americanize the film. I, on the other hand, hold it very close to my heart. The tone, narrative, and culturally relevant story of 1985 are exactly why I possess so much passion for it. I believe that New World's edits to the film serve to only better the movie due to its improved pacing, musical score, and overall sinister tone that makes Godzilla 1985 a dark, dramatic sequel worthy of its predecessor.
Honestly, like, 1 and this are probably just like one of my top ones, honestly. Just like, I love seeing just the get the fuck out of my way,
Yeah.
Godzilla.
Like, it really does feel like we're going back to what made Godzilla so worthwhile in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of looked up how much $80 was in the 80s, and
Ow.
it wouldn't be unreasonable to pay $280 for a movie this good.
Well, to be fair, a lot of those were like Blockbuster and video stores paying higher price to get a copy and keep it in rotation,
That
but
makes
it's still a
sense.
fuck ton of money for that.
Yeah, and 100,000 copies.
Yeah.
You know, it was certainly a bit of an exercise to go from where we were before with Godzilla, where he was the hero, he was the good guy, cheering him on. And now we have to jump back into the mindset of Godzilla being the antagonistic force. So it was certainly like, okay, I feel like I'm going back 100 years to get back into this mindset. And, you know, it really did feel like the original movie again, but more. If I were to compare the two movies together, I think I still prefer the narrative of the original film. I think the original film's narrative and plot, which was done so well, especially for the time, I still kind of hold that in a really high regard. But in terms of pure spectacle and tone, this movie is unlike anything I've ever seen before. I would even go so far as to kind of just place the spectacle and carnage of this film. I think I would probably even grade it above what we've seen from the Legendary films. There's just something about the way it was shot and storyboarded and presented that is completely unique even in the realms of the Godzilla franchise.
This is the first time that, like I believe one of you said, the first time that we really see, hey, there's people in here, by the way.
Yeah, no, they really emphasize that with the destruction of the city, which, you know, mostly for, you know, budgetary reasons, the previous films, you know, didn't go super hard into that because, you know, models, they're models. But this film was cut in such a way that there was just enough cutting to people trapped in the carnage. Like, for example, the people stuck on that train that he picks up and then just drops. And like, those people are dead. There's just no ignoring that.
Everyone
and then
on that freeway.
yeah, which is one of the best shots of the film is all those cars stuck on that freeway getting domino exploded. And like, no, people died in that. This isn't just an empty evacuated city of models. This is destruction and in-your-face death that we have not seen since the original movie.
And I'm really glad that you pointed out, Jake, that this movie is unlike anything you've seen before. Because, yeah, people can make the simple statements of it's still a guy in a suit, the effects still aren't as polished, because by this point, American audiences have had Star Wars, and they've had Blade Runner, and something way beyond what you'd normally expect. Yeah. So they were not expecting the same tried and true effects that Japan had. But, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I, too, have not seen another film that takes place in the modern era that's not too high-tech of the new millennium and not too low-tech of the 50s and 60s. It's right in the sweet spot of the 80s, where the effects are still handmade, but are shot in a way that make you feel like this story has such a serious tone. And if you're along for the ride, it feels just the right kind of dark and sinister that definitely brings an ancient event that we just heard about. Like at this stage, it's like, oh, we weren't in the 50s. We don't know what happened. It's just a historical event
It's
for
history
us.
to us.
Yeah, and now it's back.
It was really cool. Like this movie holds up.
Thank you.
I would say
I would agree.
Like in the same realm as The Matrix holds up today.
Godzilla fires his atomic breath from this profile that allows you to see it completely impale and shoot straight through a building like a freaking Kamehameha wave. Like, that looked incredible.
Yeah.
Like, there's a few moments where, like, it's kind of obvious green screen or, like, the perspective's, like, just a little off, but it's so, like, it's done so believably that you're really willing to just suspend your disbelief and just kind of go along with it, because the tone of the movie definitely, it feels like an insignificant gripe to have that you notice this one little noticeable aspect of this dated special effect technology.
Right. And the best part, I feel like, that this movie offers, it stands on its own.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could have not seen the first 1954.
You don't need 54 to understand this movie.
They talk about just enough and they show just enough. This movie stands on its own. And,
it's exactly why it's definitely one of the first ones where I can just show someone and be like, this is a good entry point.
You could watch this and then watch
it tells you everything you need to know about Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's like just a tiny bit of a mild tragedy that this movie works as a direct sequel to the original.
In what way?
I don't know. I feel like you could skip the whole Showa era if you're watching these movies and skip to 85. And
you totally could.
It would definitely be like a better experience if you like action and destruction in movies like this.
Yeah. If you wanted a really cool story to watch, watch 54. Watch this.
Yeah, like to quote James Rolfe, like there are so many different ways you can approach this series.
Yeah.
And two options that you could have is like a trilogy. You could have 54, 85, and then Destroya, which kind of completes the connection between the three films, or 54, 85, and Shin, because each of those movies brings him back and uses him as a nuclear metaphor. So we don't necessarily need remakes, but if you readapt a timeless idea and a concept, you can get something like this.
Yeah. So long as the metaphor that Godzilla represents stays relevant, this story will always be told.
So on the topic of the nuclear metaphor, one of the more controversial bits of trivia that's related to these two films, 84 and 85, is the presence of the Russian government and how 84 portrays them as neutral, whereas 85 supposedly portrays them as the villain due to political bias. This is both correct and incorrect. Godzilla films have expertly embodied a nation's tragedies and fears over countless decades, and 85 in particular helped to represent these fears not by painting Russia as the villain, but by illustrating mankind's desperation to destroy what they cannot understand.
Yeah.
The most prominent example of the supposed Russian criticism comes from an editorial change.
Надо скорее остановить. Господи, дай меня сил. Надо скорее остановить. Господи, дай меня сил.
When I watched that sequence in the theater, and you showed us the version where he did purposely launch the nuke, that second one, I didn't see Russia just being Russia. I saw a group of humans being scared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I didn't really connect it with Russia, which, right now is a very poignant topic with what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
I think that you could have replaced Russia in that scenario with any nuclear power and come to that same conclusion of, hey, push the button. That's that's part of the metaphor of it's the human panic.
Exactly, and I get that, but it's like I'm not saying it's unrealistic or it's unbelievable. I just like go to that logic and I'm like, God, you're a fucking idiot.
Well, here's the context behind that. So in 84, the captain of a Russian ship docked in Japanese waters is tasked with monitoring the nuclear console. When it's damaged during Godzilla's attack, he tries to stop it from firing and fails, painting the eventual nuclear missile launch as an accident. In 85, the scene has received new subtitles that shows how Moscow wants to intentionally keep the nuclear option open. When the console is damaged, the captain's motivation has been changed to wanting to launch the missile and succeeds. This change has forever been interpreted as American criticism against Russia for the time, by turning a heroic action into a villainous one. The truth of the matter is that in 85, even though the nuclear option was kept open, it was only used upon the action of one man. This captain does not represent the whole of the Russian government. If anything, he represents how the simple push of a button from any individual is capable of causing nuclear destruction. America eventually fires their own missile to intercept Russia's, which has also been interpreted as painting America in a positive light, despite the fact that America does this in both versions. To quote producer Tony Randall on why the anti-Russian sentiment seemed to be a thing, he replied, "I remember looking over the film and trying to figure out how we were going to integrate scenes. I had a really funny idea. Let's make it so the Russians start the whole thing. It had nothing to do with the studio head's politics. I'll take 100% blame for that, and to this day, I get the biggest laugh about it. It was a 1980s joke." And regardless of whether the nuclear launch was accidental or intentional, the use of nuclear missiles still leads to Godzilla becoming resurrected through sheer lightning caused by the atmospheric blast, showing once again how when man plays God, monsters are born.
Nice.
Yeah.
I do prefer the version that you showed us. Is for pretty much the exact same reasons that you displayed there. That it actually it strengthens the metaphor. I think the message is weakened if the launch of that missile was an accident. The fact that it is launched purposefully by man. And that is what is important.
For what he believed would be the greater good.
Yeah.
But the fact is that that scene can still be interpreted very heavily as Russia was selfish and launched the missile, despite it just being the one captain.
Sure.
And so I can understand that. So having the blame be on them for keeping it open, but and the guy wanting to go stop it from launching and being electrocuted before he could is a little bit more of one of those like bittersweet fuck
Right, yeah.
moments.
I don't know, like what Willie said, and he was fearing for all of Russia, but it's like it's not unreasonable for someone in that position to think so.
I agree.
And it's just kind of another layer of how like nationalistic fear could lead someone to doing something incredibly reckless.
This movie creates intelligent discussion. La, 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 la. Take that, all you people who don't like this movie. It's just really validating because the stuff that I got from that quote from the producer like came from an interview several years ago that we didn't have all throughout the 80s and the 90s, and people just thought, oh, it's
He
it's
had
biased.
the interview several years ago.
Yeah. So
Wow, so it was in like the 2000s?
yeah, like 2017, 2016.
Wow.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
very late.
Yeah.
Very recent.
So that's a long time in which, the fans didn't have answers and all they
Right.
could do was, give an interpretation of events.
Yeah, that's like what, like nearly 42 years? Am I terrible at math?
Over 30. In keeping with trying to show Godzilla 1985 as perfect as I could, I ended up showing a HD fan edit that I added a touch of color correction, a few more sound elements that were missing from the film, in addition to adding Bambi Meets Godzilla at the opening. When Godzilla 1985 was released, both in theaters and on video, it would open with the short animated film from 1969, Bambi Meets Godzilla, where pleasant music plays while Bambi nips at the grass for a minute, until a single Godzilla foot crushes him to death as the music changes to a sudden crash. What some may find funny, I found enigmatic and terrifying as a child. It was the first image that cemented Godzilla as an evil monster in my mind.
Yeah,
It's because of the toe curling.
yeah.
I love
the toenail curling.
Yes. That image has like stuck with me forever, and I just love it. And it wasn't until recently where I read those articles and interviews where they asked him, so what's with the toenail curl? And he's like, well, it was just a still image. I had to add something in there to keep your attention. So that's why that's there.
Some movement.
Yeah, when it comes to the edits, did you have to find like the American scenes from a VHS edit or something, or?
No, the fan edit was someone who took the Blu-ray for the 84 version, a HD broadcast from Germany of 85, and probably some elements from the Laserdisc of 85 to make it look that good.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, because I really didn't notice any real dips in any weird quality changes of any kind.
I was too engrossed to notice.
Yeah, I'm happy to say, and as a Godzilla fan and as a projectionist, that this is probably the best you can view this film as in its entirety. A little trivia for Bambi Meets Godzilla. The sound effect when Godzilla slams his foot down is a slowed-down version of the final note from the Beatles song A Day in the Life.
That is
Wait, it's a slowed down one version? Wow.
that is certainly
Yeah.
a fun fact. Thank you.
Something else that I learned just recently about this movie. I had no idea that the toy that Steve Martin's grandson was playing with in the movie was not only a real toy, it was part of a toy line called Robostrucks, which was the second incarnation of the Zoids toy line.
Zoids, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
Goddamn Zoids.
Zoids was around in the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
And as soon as I found out that this was a real thing, you
had
bet
oh,
your
hells yeah!
You can bet your ass that I found it on eBay and I bought the motherfucker.
Was it, can I ask how much?
This thing was like $70.
Not bad, honestly.
Not bad for an 80s electronic
Not bad
toy.
for something that usually goes for $500.
Oh, fuck. Does it work?
Sort of. I haven't put C batteries in.
Do you want me to see if I have any?
No, I'm good. But yeah, this thing is something that was ingrained in my brain for 25 years, and now it's in front of me.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just great. My favorite thing about it, too, is the fact that, is the fact that
It jiggles.
the plastic sounds are the same in the movie.
Yeah.
That classic, terrible, creaky plastic sound. I never thought I would miss it. Just I would be glad to see it. Never thought I'd be glad to see it.
That is
Part of
fu-
me wants to cut off these nibs so bad,
No.
but because it's on a toy that's like 40 something years old, I have to just be like, no.
or
a
because
part
it's
of
not
it.
yours.
I mean, mostly that.
Ideally.
That is really fucking cool design, honestly.
They don't make them like they
Like,
used to.
honestly, I would love to see that as a Godzilla villain.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the best
That-
design of Mechagodzilla I've ever seen.
I was just about to say.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, honestly,
why haven't we seen Zoids versus Godzilla?
because
Legendary Pictures, get on it. Akihiko Harada, best known for his role as Dr. Serizawa, was supposed to play the character of Professor Hayashida, but his failing health disallowed him from being in the film, and he unfortunately passed away in 1984 before the film would be released in Japan. Yeah.
Sad face.
Would have been great to have him just come back for that kind of role, but
I don't mind that part. Well, yes, definitely, but with the part of failing health, no, you don't have to. Just please stay long
Right,
enough
yeah.
to watch it.
people argue that the American scenes, which mostly consist of Steve Martin interacting with the American military, could easily be removed and have no real effect on the story. And to be honest, this is completely true. You could remove all of Martin's scenes and nothing would be removed from the plot. But what makes them dramatically effective is Raymond Burr's dialogue and performance, which my co-host attributed to Orson Welles.
True.
He truly embodies a character who suffered a great deal during his encounter with Godzilla and has an emotional tether to the original film, much like Dr. Hayashida and the Prime Minister, aging men who thought they had escaped the dangers of this living nuclear weapon 30 years ago. In fact, one of the shots that the American team wanted to add to the film was an insert after the homeless man is trampled by Godzilla. The shot would have been a close-up of his broken wristwatch, the hands frozen at 8:15, the exact time the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Anyone who believes that the American team didn't take the project seriously was sorely wrong. Especially Raymond Burr, who fought tooth and nail to keep the tone serious during his shoots, refusing to make jokes or be included in any unnecessary product placement. When the American director R.J. Kaiser asked if Raymond Burr would take a sip of Dr. Pepper on screen, the actor looked at him with a withering glare and said nothing. The marketing agent later asked Kaiser, "Can we at least take a picture of Raymond Burr holding up a Dr. Pepper?" To which the director responded, "Why don't you go ask him?" After that, he backed off.
So can we bring up the whole pendant thing that he?
Yes, we can.
Yay.
Because I feel like
Snake pendant.
you probably told me what it was about last time, but I forgot.
No, because I didn't learn until recently when I discovered all these articles.
Okay.
What's the deal with the snake pendant?
Snake pendant, or dragon talisman. The dragon talisman was supposed to be a memento of sorts from Martin's first trip to Tokyo. Though mostly there for dramatic purposes, it was sort of supposed to be a psychic connection between Steve Martin and Godzilla, according to director R.J. Kaiser. Not so much literally, but thematically. So that's kind of mostly why it's there. It's also playing with the idea of the dragon in Japanese folklore coming to a society like in the event of a disaster, or just the idea of an eternal mystical creature coming back throughout history. That's
Good. Now I can sleep at night.
Note to self, find that on eBay as well.
Yeah.
So in addition to the tried and true techniques of suitmation, miniatures, and rear screen projection, a $475,000 16-foot high Godzilla Cybot was constructed for facial expressions and upper body movements, containing 3,000 computer-controlled mechanical parts and was operated by hydraulic pressure.
What?
That's cool.
Yep.
What was this for?
So to achieve this Godzilla, which speaking of which, this is my favorite suit design in the entire series, with its shiny black coating and fanged teeth and eyes that look as though they're rolling into the back of his head.
Yeah.
It's
Good.
I loved the eyes.
yeah, you can't beat this one in my opinion. But to achieve it, it's an actor in a suit, in addition to a essentially just a Cybot, a giant robot they use for close-ups and to just make it look more realistic.
Wow.
Wow.
If you want an idea of how large it was.
That's.
Jesus fucking Christ, that's Godzilla.
Wow, yeah, that's
That's
16
bigger than
feet, all right.
That's
Holy
bigger than I
shit.
expected. Holy crap!
I thought I misheard.
That's
Please tell me that's in a museum somewhere, at least in Japan.
So as I mentioned in a previous episode, this is unfortunately one of the suits that was stolen and has never been recovered. But the Cybot still exists, and every now and then Toho will bring it out for celebrations or anniversaries.
cool.
One of the things that made me happy, Chaz, is how much you enjoyed the music in this, because this might be my favorite score in the series. One of the main reasons why 1985 has never received a proper DVD or Blu-ray release in America is because New Line decided to follow in the footsteps of John Beck when he distributed King Kong vs. Godzilla and replaced the original score with music from other movies. In 1985's case, it reused music from a forgotten New Line film called DEFCON 4. However, director and last-minute music editor R.J. Kaiser didn't replace Reijiro Kuroku's original score. He kept it mostly intact, while also reusing it for essential scenes, and using the DEFCON 4 score to accentuate the film's dramatic tone, and 1985 would not be the same without it. That incredibly tense music that plays during the Russian submarine attack? DEFCON 4. That ominous Japanese flute that plays when Steve Martin wakes up in the opening scene? DEFCON 4.
Really?
It all still works and is a beautiful example of utilizing other source material to the best of its ability.
Which is interesting, because some of that music does kind of hold the tension in a way that the score for The Thing does.
And at any point, do you feel like this score doesn't match what I'm watching?
Yeah, it feels apropos.
I didn't hear no scores took me out of anything.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about this movie that goes straight back to my childhood, because this is how you're introduced to this series, is the title sequence that is just one of the greatest things I can think of.
That's a good
in
title.
perpetuity.
Columns of Flame, as the title is like unveiled, almost like it's tape on the glass.
Mm-hmm.
And it has this kind of hybrid. It's almost like a hybrid between the Terminator intro theme and the intro for The Thing, where it's like the everything like burns onto the screen. It's a nice combination of the two.
So speaking of that, visual effects artist Ernest Farino, famous for his work on the title sequence for The Terminator, created the simplistic and incredible title sequence that perfectly sets the tone for the movie. The columns of flames that tear away at a black screen with Reijiro Kuroku's ominous score is all we need to foreshadow Tokyo's inevitable destruction. When Ernest Farino visited Comic-Con in 1997, he was approached by a fan who said, "You're Ernie Farino, I know your work." Farino thought, oh, he must mean The Terminator or The Abyss. The fan continued, "You did the titles to Godzilla 1985. He thought, you saw my name tag and you thought of Godzilla 1985. On the set of Starship Troopers, he told this story to his producer, who said, "You can't choose what you're remembered for." Farino states, "In the broader scheme of things, never do anything less than your best work, because you never know who's watching."
I like that.
So one of the biggest topics of discussion for this is just the plain differences between 1984's Return to Godzilla and the American Godzilla 1985. When I eventually get around to making my video essay on the subject,
In this essay, I will.
right, you'll have a better idea of the differences between the American and Japanese film. But they can be summed up as Japanese nuance versus American speed. As someone who has seen every Godzilla film in the series, I am no stranger to overly long exposition and cultural nuances of Japanese filmmaking. But that's exactly why 1985 works so well, because erasing these overly long explanations leaves so much more to the imagination.
last night's storm. The extent of damages and injuries is still rising, and officials expect losses to be in the millions as regional reports continue to come in.
Wow. The 85 cut definitely holds the tension a lot better and transitions much more naturally.
Yep.
Instead of this B-movie-esque cut to just a guy on his sailboat. Wow.
I mean, it kind of felt like I was watching Godzilla, and then suddenly, like, then suddenly the dog jumped on the couch and sat on the room and changed the channel. And I was suddenly watching Gilligan's Island.
Stands up from the sofa. God damn it! Who recorded over my copy of Godzilla 1985?
So after Godzilla's ominous roar, 84's version ends with an uneventful fade-in to a boat sailing during the day, with the Japanese pop song Sayonara Lover removing any tension the film had established, the song of which was sung by the love interest in this film. Whereas 85 re-edits the scene so that a flash of bright light is accompanied by Godzilla's deafening roar that fades into the sound of thunder, quickly cutting to the face of an old man shielding his eyes as if awakening from a terrible nightmare, with the score gently fading in to the sound of a Japanese flute, all of which creates the most ominous prelude to Godzilla's return I have ever seen.
Yeah. I can 100% say for certain that the 84 cut has no bearing over the 85 intro.
彼が見たモンスターというのはゴジラです。ゴジラ？私は奥村君をよく知っていますが、信頼できる人間です。やっぱりそうでしたか。事実とは信じたくなかったが、それにしても第五旗丸の乗組員の死体はなぜあのような巨大な船虫によって体内のすべての血液と水分を吸い取られたからです。
Excuse me, sir. Are you Professor Hayashida?
That's right.
Maki of Total Press.
Oh, really? A reporter.
What's that you're working on?
Genetic mutation designs.
Genetic mutations? No kidding. Does it have something to do with Godzilla?
So the editorial cuts are even more prominent when Professor Hayashida is introduced, aka the Japanese Charles Bronson. In 1984, he's introduced as a respected scientist who speaks with Hiroshi and explains the dead bodies on the ship, whereas 85 removes this entirely, placing his first appearance in his lab. He appears recluse and focused. We don't even see his entire face until Godzilla is mentioned. It's more streamlined, but just as effective.
That one's a bit more interesting because there's a lot more contrast between the two scenes. I immediately questioned the decision to just show photographs of Godzilla, because now you're just revealing the monster. In a monster movie, especially when it takes itself seriously, you only have one chance to land that first impression of first seeing the monster. Having just still black and white photographs removes all of the tension from awaiting the monster's first appearance.
Yeah.
Especially since they seem like they're just shots from 1954 Godzilla.
Yeah.
What they should have done with that scene is not have had multiple pictures, had one single sheet, handed the sheet to the guy stares at it, looks up,
Right.
And then we never see it.
and we never see the
That
picture.
that could have worked.
actually is a good idea.
Yeah, that would have worked. The explanation of the sea louse and how it got big is interesting, but wholly not needed.
Right.
It's
Because,
odd.
so as a kid, that freaked the fuck out of me. So what was your guys'
Oh, no, like,
no, we're
sea
going to a
louse?
Godzilla movie. Now it's Alien.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
thought I was freaking because, like, they walk onto the ship and we see the remains of pretty much everyone's just been like mummified on board. I'm like, did Godzilla do that? Godzilla's never been able to do. Is this what happened?
Yeah, like is that his atomic breath? I mean, if it was his atomic breath, there would be like nothing left.
Like for a little bit, I thought it was like an old ship that like had gone missing a long time ago.
Yeah,
I knew it would have been the same ship, but I wasn't sure if what we saw was maybe a callback to the first movie, and this was the remains of that ship.
Yeah, no, am I watching The Thing all of a sudden? Like, what the hell is going on?
But I honestly did enjoy seeing the explanation for the sea louses. I would have liked to have seen that at some point in the original, because otherwise it's just giant sea thing that I don't know what it is and mummified corpses, and that was never explained.
Yeah, kind of just leaves the cut that we saw kind of leaves you to connect the dots of what exactly it was. But you know, on the whole, the louse really wasn't that narratively important.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It sets a mood, but it really has nothing to do with the overall thing of Godzilla. It really didn't need to exist beyond creating a creepy atmosphere.
Yeah, but that fucking atmosphere is good.
I love that
when
so
the when the hand
comes
down from the bed, you're like it's like a jump scare that doesn't get you going. Ah! It's like just like a jump scare that makes you go.
No, that was seeing
what I
what
did to you. You were like, ugh.
Yeah,
Godzilla.
exactly. Like I backed away. I was like, just like make that noise in general.
This is the moment that Godzilla actually becomes a horror movie.
One of the most significant examples of how you can actually make a film better, the scene where Professor Hayashida tests his radio frequency. He hypothesizes that he can recreate the same frequency of migratory birds that Godzilla follows, thus luring him into a volcano on Mount Mihara. 84 presents this scene with no music and no sense of tension, whereas 85 turns the scene into a life or death situation.
Yoshi, 成功だ。
先生。
まもなく自衛隊のヘリが屋上に迎えに来るはずだ。急ごう。
It worked. They got him here.
Frequency 2.
It becomes a life or death situation by proving Hayashida right, while also potentially leading Godzilla to attack, all the while using the score to blend into the rising sound of the frequency. And with the rising of the score in addition to the frequency, it feels like the same kind of tension that you would find of the rising train whistle in The Godfather. And for those who are already thinking, surely you can't compare a film like The Godfather with Godzilla.
They both got God in the name.
Why the fuck not?
It's true.
Watch him.
Well, guess what? Peter Zinner, who edited the American version of King Kong vs. Godzilla, was also the editor for The Godfather. So shut your mouth.
too will believe that an animatronic can feel pain.
So in 1984, when Godzilla is seemingly neutralized by the Super X, his collapse plays out in silence. 85 decided to add one of his roars from the original films. It's strange because it sounds like nothing like his new roar sounds, and his mouth isn't open. But the strangeness works because it's eliciting a sound of ancient pain mixed with nostalgic analog sound effects.
Yeah.
As if there's just something wrong with him.
That was what I really loved about this movie, and I forgot to bring it up. The roar felt like the war would have been 30 years later. And it wasn't just the same reused sound over and over again.
Yeah.
They had like a few different versions of that roar that did different things and elicit different things. It was cool.
Yeah. It's the original, but like so much more guttural.
Yeah.
And angry. And
The
sinister.
deepness of that roar, the like for musical terms, the bass in that roar is what I heard. I noticed it immediately and I loved it.
And then one last difference. Here's an example of how the 84 cut has no music, and the American cut puts DEFCON 4 music, bettering the scene.
Глубина 300. Расстояние 3 мили. Курс 12 градусов. Продолжает приближаться с большой скоростью. Глубина 300. Расстояние 3 мили. Курс 12 градусов. Продолжает приближаться с большой скоростью.
Music that wasn't even from this movie, and yet works perfectly well.
Yeah, it does. It honestly feels like something that would have been playing.
And finally, the ending is one of the most tragic in the Godzilla series, and it never fails to make me cry. With some of the most heartbreaking orchestral fanfare, Godzilla is lured to the edge of Mount Mahara, where the military activates explosives, sending him into the volcano. This scene is kept intact in 1985 and is only improved upon as Raymond Burr gives a speech that he wrote himself that perfectly finishes the story.
It's really interesting that the gravitas that the film puts behind it, because the film kind of doesn't treat it as a victory, but more it treats it with some more melancholy. I liken it to like when you defeat one of the Colossi in Shadow of the Colossus, where there's
Jake, I love you.
There's tragedy behind the destruction of this grand creature that, yes, it needed to be stopped, but there's still not necessarily a point for celebration or joy. It's tragedy.
Like this creature is more ancient and known, like knowledge, than you could ever really know, and you just kind of had to kill it.
Thank you for completely understanding that, because it's just like, even as a kid, like even though you see this monster as a villain, it's heartbreaking.
It almost feels like more of a finality than 54, even though 54 showed the skeleton.
Right. Well, 30 years ago, Willie, they never found any corpse.
Exactly. So even that won't kill him.
Right.
But it's still like one of those things that probably still fucking hurts.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably doing something.
Because the thing is, like, it's not so much a death as it is what Hayashida said. I'm just trying to send him home. And you still have Godzilla screaming as he falls in, and it's heartbreaking every time.
Yeah, like that scream.
And people ask if you're okay, and you say, yeah, but you're really not.
You just have to say if you're fine, but you're not really fine because they just never understand.
I mean, I'm sure that bears no relation to why I have it written in my will that I want my ashes cast into Mount Mahara.
We'll make sure that happens.
You said it here, and now it's finalized, so yes.
I mean, it's in your will, so we kind of already have to do it.
Somebody better enjoy a trip to Japan and throw me into the fucking volcano. Some side notes on the connection to the original as well. So, with the viewer's context, we do see Godzilla's skeleton disappear into nothing, which begs the question, how could he possibly come back? Personally, I love to believe that just Godzilla is something that will always come back so long as we keep fucking up the earth.
I think they said that in this movie in general.
Right. Like
they said something very similar.
Yeah, when Godzilla will appear whenever man tries to fuck up with nature.
Yeah. Just in spirit, he has come back to the exact same place that he attacked before. But for anyone who wants an actual explanation, stay tuned for the future movies as to why Godzilla came back.
Woohoo! From the 54 oxygen destroyer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
I thought it was a pretty nice retcon about how nobody found the bones.
Exactly. Because in the movie's context, no one would have seen that besides Sarazawa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for all we know, he's a radioactive dragon. You could probably regenerate from marrow.
I like
And
that
for all we know, those were Dr. Sarazawa's bones.
Okay.
Sure. His human form under the oxygen destroyer grotesquely morphed into the exact shape of Godzilla's.
Well, Willie, if you play the Sega Dreamcast Godzilla game where you can actually play as a giant Dr. Sarazawa, maybe. And in connection with the film, like we've given the other movies shit for using stock footage, but because Ishiro Honda is such a great director to where his footage looks like documentary footage, when we watch 1954's Rampage, it looks like documentary footage of like wartime situations.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like we're just rewatching the first film again.
But they also made the right call of not doing that for 10 minutes.
Right.
Also, I do like how it kind of homaged the the first the scene in from 54 where Godzilla attacks the harbor. And like it shows in great detail how he just eviscerates everything in a matter of seconds.
To which Jake responded, "Shit."
Sounds about right.
Because you actually do see at least one group of soldiers in particular get vaporized.
Yeah, and one on fire. Which,
Yeah.
as a kid, that's the first time I saw someone on fire.
So, there's that.
Sweet.
So that's where that kink came from.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Cruz is not the Scream-a-Pillar.
What?
Which would make a great fucking kaiju.
What?
Your guys' thoughts on the Super X, which a lot of people seem to hate, but I love because of how pathetic it looks.
I love its clunky over-designedness, the way that like all of its weapons have to pop out of the top, almost kind of negating how good and well covered the armor is.
Yeah.
It threw me off at first when I first saw it because I'm like, oh, okay, this feels like it just came out of the 50s. Like
It feel like it came out of a 60s Doctor Who episode.
Yeah, no, it threw me off at first, but once it started actually fighting, that's when I'm like, okay, I get this now.
Yeah. When it fights, it's cool. When it's just there, it's dumb, but I love it.
It looks like something that they had to design in like a period of time where they don't know when they're going to use it, but they were just able to throw as much money as they could possibly have at it.
I only have one very important question about the Super X. Does it have bombs?
Does it have bombs? Yes, a variety of missiles. And just like James Bond, Super X will return.
Yeah, cool.
Does it have upgrades?
Does it have bombs?
Does it have bombs? Does it have bigger bombs? More bombs?
And of course, one of the greatest shots that to me, it's like, for all you fuckers who don't like 1985, he drops an entire skyscraper on this thing and then just looks at the audience.
Yep.
This film is the fucking best.
It didn't
Fuck
show
all
the,
y'all.
It didn't didn't show the Super X coming out of that, did it?
No.
Well, no, it's
I
lost.
That
just
shit ain't getting
realized.
up. Super X is down for the count.
It lost.
Willie,
Yeah.
at best case scenario, they're gonna have to like.
I just wanted to make sure that was the last shot of the Super X that I remembered seeing.
Yeah, best case scenario, it's going to be like a couple days of digging through rubble to get the crew out, whatever's left, because the last we saw, parts of it were overheating and blowing up.
Yeah.
Due to its use of music from the film DEFCON 4 and several other rights issues, 1985 has never received a proper DVD or Blu-ray release in the US and is the only Godzilla film not to do so. 1984 is available on Blu-ray, but it's saddening to think that many viewers may never be able to see a rare example of how an American editing team actually paid respect to the source material and improved upon it through better pacing, additional thematic elements, and perfect music choices. Not to mention spending the money to bring a new Godzilla film to movie theaters in the States after years of audiences only catching television broadcasts. Even if its theatrical performance didn't do well, it still brought a film rife with nuclear metaphors to the American movie-going public during a turbulent decade that was becoming fearful of government control, expanding technology, and doomsday possibilities of the future. My praise for this film doesn't simply come from nostalgia. It stands as one of the quintessential incarnations of Godzilla's story, matched only by the original and Shin Godzilla. Each film made 30 years apart, and each representing him as a symbol of nuclear destruction.
I don't know what to say exactly, but thank you for putting this together, not just for us, but I hope you somehow make it available for other people to enjoy too, because this really does feel like a fully realized version of this movie.
At the very least, I just want to thank you for really sharing not just the film, but all of these personal anecdotes and your personal connection with it. I've said in previous episodes of this project that you and I have been using these films to really kind of put ourselves out there and just kind of use them as an exhibit to, here is me in this form. And this movie, more than any of the other Godzilla films that came out the most, where I can see the absolute passion and the piece of your soul that you keep within this film, and how it stays in your soul in return. And so I just want to say thank you for opening up to us in that way.
Thank you, Jake.
Welcome.
So, Jake, would you recommend A View to a Kill or Godzilla 1985 to a first-time viewer?
Like I said, for the majority of the Roger Moore films, they're standalone enough that any one of them can pretty much serve as a stepping stone. And A View to a Kill is very beginner-friendly. It's a simple story that you can hop into and be introduced to the world of James Bond very easily. As far as Godzilla goes, this is about as perfect as you can get to a Godzilla introduction. You can pretty much forget everything that has come before. You can just watch this. That's it. You know Godzilla. You're ready to go.
Yes, you watch this movie first. The next thing you have to do is watch the first one, though. I feel like that's what you should do after watching this one, is go watch the first one immediately. And yes, to A View to a Kill as well. It's honestly one of Moore's best performances, I believe. Christopher Walken's probably one of the best freaking Bond villains that we've seen so far, and probably one of the top 5 of my favorites.
Honestly, both of these movies for me feel like they're the pinnacle of the franchises for each film. Especially for A View to a Kill, where just the lines feel punchy and quippy, and they fit. It all comes down to Bond's wit and where he can take the story. And with the 1985, it's just a fantastic movie that maybe isn't so good in the original Japanese cut, but you'll definitely see the strengths of this franchise from these movies. And I haven't seen the 85 or the 84 cut, but I would definitely have to recommend the Cruz cut.
I want to cry.
Just simply for the added touches that really make the experience feel complete.
Thank you.
Definitely. Like honestly, contact Toho. Ask him if he could have some form of license.
No, don't contact Toho.
No,
No, leave me up to Toho. I'm sorry.
No, I know. But seriously, like if you could put this anywhere for people to enjoy.
There comes Godzilla's foot.
Godzilla v. Cruz Moore.
Yeah.
For A View to a Kill, even though it is Roger's last installment in the series, it's one of the best, and it possesses everything that I think a Bond film should possess, especially if you're going in with something as simple as Dr. No. It's back to the basics. It has an incredible villain, relatable characters and events, and it feels grounded and a great entry point. Godzilla 1985, yes, a million times yes. I don't just say that out of nostalgia. I say it out of cinematic appreciation. It's an embodiment of multiple nations' fears. It does exactly what it needs to do and is one of the best in the series, right next to the original.
Next time on James Bond, it's the first of 2 movies starring Timothy Dalton, which tries to lead the franchise in a grittier and more realistic direction. Like that could ever work. James Bond will return in The Living Daylights.
And next time on Godzilla, what do you get when you mix Godzilla DNA with flower DNA and the soul of a young Japanese woman? You get my favorite and very misunderstood entry in the Versus Heisei series, Godzilla vs. Biollante. Thank you all for listening to Bond vs. Godzilla. We'll see you next time with a martini in one hand and a rubber suit in the other.
Stay tuned and stay watching.